Should we take a look at the fantasy basketball waiver wire? I'm going to give you 40 names, including a name that no one else is talking about, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'm very disappointed that none of you asked me to be your daylight for daylight savings. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Also, go to LockedOnDaily.com and check out the newsletters, the best newsletter for your favorite NBA team, LockedOnDaily.com, and double bang these videos. You watch the audio, you listen to the audio, you watch the video, you comment, you subscribe, and all that stuff. Now, I promised a big thing at the start. I said I'm going to talk about a name no one else is talking about. Remember Andris Biedrins? Yeah. He was a player. No one else is talking about him at the moment. What else we need to go into, though, is other waiver wire stuff that's probably a little bit more relevant for you at the moment. And let's talk about the most added players across the waiver wire landscape. It is Labor Day here in Australia as well today, so shout out to everyone going through Labor and the pain that you guys have to... No, different Labor. Shout out to public holidays that I don't get to observe because I don't work in anywhere that does public holidays. Cool. Anyway, I actually do not care because I love this job. Let's talk about the most added players. And number one on the list is the big fella, who's actually small, Brandon Williams. Are we going to have 2 out of the last 3 years where Brandon Williams turns into a legitimate silly season league winner? Because he wasn't quite a league winner in Portland. He had some really rough efficiency games, but he put up big numbers. And in Dallas, he's doing it again. And they elevated him to be the starter today. They started Spencer Dinwiddie in one game. They went to Dante Exum in the next game. And they've gone to Brandon Williams in the next game. Now, Williams is going to have every opportunity to put up numbers. We know this. You can look at his numbers up on the screen if you're watching. He had 25 usage over the last week. He's the 32nd ranked player head-to-head, 40th in points leagues, averaging 22, 5, and 7. Now, the 57% shooting has absolutely zero shot of sticking. The 7 assists, maybe. 2 threes, why not? 88 from the line, 34 minutes. Cool. All distinctly possible. He's also got 8 games left after today. 8 games. That is it. And that is where you run into the problem, is that you do not know. And the pattern at the moment is they are playing him in every game. But that could stop literally at any point. The Mavs, this will be their 65th game today. So they'll have 17 games left, meaning he can play in fewer than half of the remaining games. The time when he could be converted to a contract is the 10th of April, and after the 10th of April, the Mavericks have 2 games left on 15 game days. So there is going to be a period here. If he plays 8 in a row after today, there'll be 9 more left after that, so there'll be a period where he can't play for 7 games. Now, in your league, that's okay, right? Like, it might not matter, assuming that he plays every game in a row, which we don't know. We honestly have no idea because they can't do the thing, which theoretically you could say, well, what if they do the thing and they play him all of his games in a row, then they waive him and sign another two-way guy to replace him? Can't do it. The deadline to sign two-way guys has passed. You cannot add to your roster at this point of two-way players. They can't add to their roster in any aspect that's not a two-way guy. Well, they can't add to their roster at all, Dallas. The problem is going to be, is when does this happen? Now, after this week, the Mavericks have a 2-game week as well. What if Brandon Williams sits one of those games? Then he's completely useless. So I think he should be added, right? I think we should roll with it. It's more about let's provide the relevant info, the same way that we provided the relevant info on Moses Brown, and not everyone knew that, so people were still adding him and starting him when he wasn't actually playing. The same way we provided the relevant info on Kai Jones, the same way we're doing it here. Because not everyone gives this info. They just say, Brandon Williams, let's go, we're adding him. Okay. But you have to just, sometimes it's fine because he will just play all the games in a row and then he'll sit. But you have to know that. You have to be aware of that. You have to know that there is a risk that this week, with 4 games on, he plays 2. There's a risk of that. I don't know how realistic it is, but that could happen. There's a risk that for 2 days in a row, he's just not there. So when you're making moves and deciding who to add and how you rely upon somebody, that's the info you need to have in the back of your head. That, I think, gives you an advantage over others because they don't know that. So Williams has been great. We hope it continues. We understand that it absolutely cannot, under any circumstance, continue for the rest of the season. It cannot happen. It is a literal impossibility, but we know that. Who else is on this list of the most added players? Another Brandon. Sometimes we have Keon days. Today we've got a Brandon day. Brandon Clark. Now, unless there is a miracle recovery from Jaren Jackson, which of course there could be, and by miracle I mean Memphis lied on the injury report, Clark is going to have an elevated role here, and we roll with him while that's happening. There's no Santi Aldama, who came back from calf soreness only to get calf soreness again. Wow. Didn't see that coming. He's out again, so Clark has a huge role here. So roll with him while it's happening. Keyshawn George, one of the most added players. Keyshawn George is a weird one because his shooting is like horrendous most of the time, and the thing that he came into the league with was, hey, this guy is a shooter, and he doesn't do anything else. And he's come into the league and go, all right, I'm going to just forget doing any of that. All I'm going to do now is, out of weird assists, I'm going to block shots, I'm going to get steals, but I'm going to be one of the worst shooters in the league. So I don't know which one of these is real. If he can add the shooting back that he showed in Miami, that's a real player. But it's been a whole year and it hasn't been there. So he's fine to roster Keyshawn George, but to me, he's still more fringy. Cole Anthony cooked in the last game, and we know Suggs isn't coming back. I think you're going to get a 67% good game ratio from Anthony. Is that enough? It probably is. I don't worry that Mr. Black is going to become a good player and take the minutes off him. It remains, and you know that I've been on the Cole Anthony thing for a while saying, this guy is good. If he starts somewhere, he will be a very good player. I don't understand why they're deprioritizing him, but eventually they got there, and the value is good. It's just going to be up and down. The next most added player is Juice McBride. We understand why, but now we have to have our relevant thought process because the Knicks have a bad schedule. They've got 2 games the next 7 nights. They're one of only 5 teams who have 2 quality games this coming week. And if McBride shoots 4% like he did in the last 2 games, exaggeration, but also not that bad. Not that big of an exaggeration. If he shoots like that with 2 games on, he's absolutely not worth holding. Now, I don't believe the timeline given on Jalen Brunson in 2 weeks. I think it's going to be longer than that. But we don't know because they give a timeline and you have to sort of believe it even if when you don't. So Juice McBride to me is okay, but I actually would be also okay not having him at this point. The last one there on the most added list is Andrew Nembhard. Yeah, we saw some big games from Nembhard, from Nesmith, from Mathurin in the last game, but there is a common denominator there. Somebody from TMC is out. It has been Mathurin, and then it was Halliburton. And Nembhard's giving you double-digit assists, so we love that. We use it. And then long-term, we decide to move on if that is what we need to do. We're going to come back and talk more waiver wire stuff. And I'm also going to give you some discussion on injuries to LeBron James and Amen Thompson coming up. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get your swooshing fingers ready because if they swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more swooshes, actually points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It is simple. When a player swooshes 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. So there are many ways that you can swoosh your way to an advantage with this deal. You can get yourself a little sneaky snacky snack. Maybe a little late night burger for your little swooshing needs. Or maybe you're looking to cater for a big party. Get the fellas around. Get whatever you need. You need some dry cereal for that? Do you need pizzas? Do you need burgers, sushi, tacos, burritos, chilaquiles? Whatever it is, DoorDash can get that to you. So sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to swoosh and save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. You must have an active Dash Pass. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Okay, so that was the Basketball Monster most added players over the last 48 hours. We're going to go to look at the Yahoo most added players over the last 24 hours is the way they do it. And number 1 and number 2 on this list both play for the Dallas Mavericks. And it's not Brandon Williams, and it is Najee Marshall, who to me is the must-add player. When we saw the injury to Kyrie, The guy that I was adding was Dinwiddie and Marshall. They were my two clear adds. Dinwiddie has been bad because he is bad. Marshall has been good because he is solid-ish. I would be rostering Najee Marshall, and to me, when we get to the 2-game week, he won't be worth it. But for this week, he will be. The next one there is Kessler Edwards, and like Kai Jones, and like Moses Brown, well, different to Moses Brown, but similar to Moses Brown, and very much like Brandon Williams, you have a problem with Kessler Edwards in that he is the starting center at the moment, but he cannot be the starting center for the rest of the season because, guess what? He is on a 2-way contract and there are games limits in place and he has 7 left available. In fact, that is untrue. After today, he will have 6 games left, which means he can play this week, all 4 games, starting Monday, and the next week with 2 games. That is it. He is done if they play him out. Now, he is not providing as good a value as what old mate Brandon Williams is. He's sort of okay-ish for your steals and some rebounds. More of a deeper league guy, but understand. After today, where both Edwards and Williams are starting, Williams will have 8 games left, Edwards will have 6 games left, and Kai Jones, who still is injured, will have 11 games left. And Jones is getting to that stage, being out all these games, where he's going to be able to just play all the way through. So when you get notification that Jones is back, he will become an excellent add because he played 1 game and now he's out 3 in a row here. So he's got 11 games available, Kai, but 6 for Edwards after today, 8 for Williams after today. Mason Plumlee, the third most added player. The cockroach lives, man. You cannot kill this man. He has worked his way back into somewhat of a minute split with BDNR and Nick Richards. He is still bad as a player, but he is a strong rebounder, and he gets good field goal percentage. And while they're playing him and Richards 20-plus minutes each, at least for streaming purposes, the cockroach is there. He's useful. The next guy I want to talk about here is Keon Ellis, because we know at the moment Domantas Sabonis is out. We know that Malik Monk has been out as well. And also, by the way, and I don't know this 100%, but I am very certain that Yahoo and their injured tag eligibility changed. And here's one thing. Number 1, if you play on Yahoo, you should never use IL. You should always use IL+. You do not need an extra variable that is waiting for somebody to make the switch to make them INJ eligible so you can put them into your list, into your spot so you can activate other things and give you that advantage. Where for some people it might happen earlier, for some it might happen later, for different players. That is an unbalanced playing field that's just a ridiculous thing that doesn't need to happen. You just need IL+. I don't know why we put these restrictions to make the game more difficult, more unbalanced, more unfair, which creates more disengagement. It is insane that people do this. Insane. It's so stupid. Anyway, they changed the rules. Because I am certain, even maybe the first week of the season, I checked the IL eligibility rules on Yahoo, and the rules, as they have been forever, it was the player has to be out or projected to be out for 7 days to get INJ. Now, they've changed it. Because there was the colloquial rule that people used to think, well, it's 3 games, and it literally never was. But it is now. They've coded that into their rules. They say now it's 7 days or 3 games, projected or out, whatever comes first. So that has changed. And that absolutely was not the case before this season. And I'm certain, like in week 1 or week 2 this season, because I think somebody asked me and said, why isn't this happening? I go, it's not the rules. And I went and showed them the rules, and that is what it said. But it is changed now. Interesting. Anyway, so Malik Monk is out. Domantas Sabonis is out. So Keon Ellis has been starting. And it's very easy to get excited about Ellis at times because he puts up big steal numbers. But over the last week, in like pretty good minutes, he hasn't been very good. He's been fine. He's playing 33 minutes a night, but 7, 4, and 2.7. That's disgusting. 2 steals is great. 1.7 blocks is elite. He's shooting 32 from the field. That's the opposite of elite. 12% usage. He's still available in a lot of different spots. He's only ranked 146th for category leagues, and he's 122nd on Yahoo in points leagues. That's not good. But I'm going to give him somewhat of a pass because 32% shooting is just not a realistic number. Is 2 steals and 1.7 blocks realistic? No, but yes. Like, if you were to say, hey, do you think that Keon Ellis can maintain 2 and 1.7 or he'll continue to be a 32% shooter? I'd say 2 and 1.7 is actually more realistic for him. So he has been added. People have jumped on. They're still only at 25% on Yahoo rostered, which is still very, very low. But while these guys are out and when they're back, 25 minutes of Ellis or 24 minutes of Ellis probably isn't enough. But while he is getting these bigger minutes, the defensive stats are incredibly good, And there will be a period here where he shoots better, making him a must roster. So while we look at what happened, we do cast our eye sneakily to the past and say, well, what happened there? It doesn't inform every one of our decisions because all of it is about context. All of it is about that happened, but what does it mean for now? What does it mean for the next? And that's how you view that. You're like, well, look here, shit, man, he's 146. Why would I add him? 32% shooter. When the correct way to view that is, he was a 32% shooter. He shot 32%. That happened, but it doesn't mean that it happens. Cool? So yeah, add him. The next most added player is Kyle Filipowski of the Utah Jazz. We don't know what the Jazz are going to do. I wasn't 100% accurate on this, but I was pretty accurate in the general vibe of the week for the Jazz. They're going to sit all their guys because they're playing a bunch of tanking teams. Now, next week, they go with Boston, Memphis, Toronto, Minnesota. So I would gather that you have a very, very big chance that Walker Kessler plays 3 games out of 4 next week. And you might even have the final appearances of the season of Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, Jordan Clarkson. If they don't suit up on Monday or Wednesday, Collins and Markkanen, they're done. I'm fairly certain they're done. But we are in a situation where the week is better. The week after, they go Monday, Wednesday against the Bulls and the Wizards, which I would suggest that maybe they sit some of those games and then we get another strong run of games. But we're going to have a very big on and off type scenario here for Walker Kessler, and that's going to impact Filipowski, but he is playing some of the 4 as well. Just be ready for Monday or Wednesday or both if Collins and Markkanen both play, because Filipowski will be useless, and he's going to require stashing. And for some of you, if you're in semifinals or playoffs, you won't be able to do that. It will make no sense to have a 17-minute-a-night stash guy on your team. We thought this was a good week for the Jazz to use their reserves. This next week profiles to be not a good week, unless they just pull the pin permanently, which is possible. The last name on that most added list is Justin Edwards. Realistically, again, they are being very coy about this. Realistically, I don't think that we're seeing Paul George this season, but I don't know that. They just keep saying soreness and out. They put him questionable, then they ruled him out. Then the very next game they just said out anyway, because he's out. I don't know why we lied about this. And then Tyrese Maxey, I don't know, and I don't expect him to play, but I don't know. But Edwards will start. He won't be a 12-team league guy. He'll be hey, let's just try and jam volume in on a day and see if we get good results. That's sort of how I'm going to view him. Let's look at some guys who have been dropped and figure out whether they were the right decisions. On Basketball Monster over the last 48 hours, Bol has been dropped. Yes, he is starting, but he has not produced in the last week or so, and the minutes are well down. I've got no problem with dropping him. If we see him push back to 26 minutes, then you use him. But remember, he is not a good real-life player, and coaches aren't doing things to boost numbers to make your fantasy team look good. So, yeah. Most dropped, Spencer Dinwiddie. I've held him, and I know that's probably foolish, but I still like the minutes. I don't like the 15% shooting, but I like the minutes. And Dante Exum's not a point guard. It's Dinwiddie and Williams who are there, and I also know that Williams is maybe not going to play some of these games, but he's still getting 31 minutes or so, Dinwiddie. We'll see what happens today, and then I'd make another decision. I would have tried to hold another game, because I did. Jackson Hayes has been dropped. He missed 1 game with an injury, and that's cool, but this is who he is. He is a fringe player that if you miss a game, you're out of here. Easy decision. Kelly Olynyk was dropped. I get it, because actually his last few games have not been good at all. But I was pretty sure that they were just going to sit him over this weekend back-to-back. But they didn't. The last back-to-back they had, they sat 4 players. Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum. This back-to-back, they sat 3 players. And Olynyk just got spared from it. No idea why. Absolutely no idea why he is now immune to the back-to-back rest. Don't know what changed. But it did change. So he played in them. Well, he hasn't played the Sunday game yet, but he's going to. Now, he hasn't done anything the last 2 games, 22 minutes and 22 minutes, and been really, really bad in those games. I get why people would have dropped. The thing is, they then have Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday as their games next week, which is a pretty good schedule. So I don't mind a hold, but I think the thought process in dropping with poor performances and maybe a sit today made sense. One of the most dropped players is Jeremy Sohan of the San Antonio Spurs, and I am on board with this. I actually like Sohan as a prospect. I think that there's ways that he can become a relatively useful impact player, but it is not happening at the moment. The back injury really derailed him, and he is putting up horrific numbers. 5.5 points a game over the last week. He is 261st in head-to-head leagues and 239th in category league, in points leagues. He's got under 15% usage. He hasn't generated a single steal over the last week. He's shooting 39 from the field and 25 from the line and playing just 23 minutes. There's not a single thing in that suggests that you want to be holding him in 12 or 14 team leagues. Now, if he was to play more small ball center, play 29 minutes a game, would be back in. But when this is part of the thing, like he can do it, he will do it. There will be a game where he does it. But when we're talking about a fringy sort of player, let's say best case for Sochan is, let's say 90th. That's the best case at this point in his career, I would say. If that is your best case, but there is a 50-50 risk every game where you played 23 minutes and you're the 200th player, then I don't care about that best case. It doesn't mean anything. Could I try it and just see if I hit on it on a random day? Sure. But I'm never going to bank on that. I'm never going to rely upon it. I'm definitely never going to hold waiting for that to happen. If your best case is not really even that good, and there's so many chances of terrible games, then that's not a worthy player to hold on to. You need a guy with either consistency, or you need a situation where the good is like top 30, which, yeah, you could argue that for like a Keon Ellis, that if he has good games, we're talking top 30, top 40. And the bad games maybe 160, but that trade-off is worth it sometimes. For Sochan, it's not. The next most dropped player is Isaiah Collier. And I've been pretty big on Collier as an ad for a long time, talking about the rarity of assists off the wire, seeing what would develop and how they'd go with it. And I think that was the right approach. I also think it's the right approach now to drop him. We are seeing that he gets the assists still. He plays 30 minutes, but we're not actually seeing anything ramp up. We're still seeing issues with field goals and free throw percentage. We're not seeing any volume scoring. It's a one category stream, which has value. Don't get me wrong. There's value in that. Occasionally he'll get a steal. Occasionally you have a good shooting night. But like I just said with Sochan, when the downside is so down and the upside is 100th, who cares? That's a drop. It's an easy drop. It's an easy stream. If you can turn that roster spot into 6 games, it's the most no-brainer decision you will ever make. So don't be, again, I talk about assists and the value of them all the time. But if you are just focusing on that one category and holding him for that, you're going to have so many detriments in other areas that you could just use to bulk force numbers in a playoff matchup. I don't even know if you're not in a playoff or you're in a bye or you're at the top of the standings that you go, I might hold him and see where it goes. I'm not even sure that is worth it, because it's been pretty stagnant here. After he was one of the worst players, literally the worst player in the NBA for a period of time, he improved significantly and became really useful and supplanted Keontae George and looked good. And then it's been flat. It's just been flatline for the last month, maybe 6 weeks. I haven't really seen much change from there. And that's like oh, okay. We were nicely elevating, and now we're a little stuck, which is something we need to be aware of. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That is $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, and even who is cutting down the nets. When you're out there watching the games, you got all the fellas around, you're watching who you're going to bet on, who's going to win this. Is it a 16-1 upset? I don't know. Is a what's the one that always gets the upsets? Is it the 5-12 maybe? Who cares? You know what it is, because you'll be able to check that out on FanDuel, place your bets, and hopefully get some money. So go to FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. I teased it earlier. We'll talk about it now. LeBron popped a groin. Example 10 million of never believe what a player says. Yeah, I'm fine. Actually, yeah. I remember Crouch. I never got to see him play. Yeah, LeBron, you're a liar. But for you, this is not you being a liar. This is players being liars or extremely self-confident. Do not listen to a player about their injury ever. Anthony Davis, remember him? Nah, I'm fine, day to day. Cool. Wasn't that a month ago, my guy? And you're probably never going to play again this year? They lie every time. Never believe them. It is a great blanket rule. So LeBron said he was fine. Now the report is he's out 1 to 2 weeks, which again is going to be longer. It's a groin strain. The man is 40 years old. I know he's a freak, but it's a groin strain. He has had groin strains before that cost him multiple weeks. I wonder if this is going to put him out of the 65-game minimum and then people are going to lose their mind that he doesn't get voted for All-NBA. That would be very, very funny considering that is a horrific rule and it has been a horrific rule since it was proposed and then instituted. Or does he push back earlier to get to 65 games, hurt it worse, ruin the Lakers' title chances? I don't know what would be funnier. And none of it is funny. It would just be like a dickheads moment. All right, so LeBron's out. 1 to 2 weeks, think 2 to 3. Who replaces him? Good question. Rui Hachimura is already out, so Dorian Finney-Smith's in his place. Nobody replaces LeBron, obviously. I think they could go with Jared Vanderbilt, who looked pretty good, replacing Jackson Hayes. They could go with Dalton Connect, who you know that I'm a huge fan of, but he could jump in there and play 27 minutes and get 15 points with 3 threes, and that is actually useful. And I am not a Dalton Connect guy. Again, that was sarcasm before. I'm not a Dalton Connect guy, but this is the chance for him. The other guys are going to be Gabe Vincent and Jordan Goodwin, but overall, Vanderbilt, Connect, Vincent, Goodwin, I'm not adding any of them. I'm not looking in my 12 team and I go, LeBron's gone, he's the guy to replace LeBron. You know who replaces LeBron? Nobody. You can't replicate what he does. So all of those guys get bumps. Do they bump enough to become streamable? Well, I think Vanderbilt and Connect will. Goodwin and Vincent, probably not. But that doesn't mean they can't at least be considered in those particular spots. There is no one that I go, and if you go, well, which one would you add? None of them. I wouldn't add any of them. I would look on a game where the Lakers play. I would look at my individual lineup. I would look at which particular stat I might need. And if I wanted some defensive numbers, I'd go Vando. If I wanted some offensive numbers, I'd go Connect. If I hated myself, I'd go Gabe Vincent. So maybe I would go Gabe Vincent. That is how I would approach that. So I wouldn't add any of them in 10 or 12 team leagues. In 14s, I would go with Connect over Vanderbilt just because I think they need the offense more than the defense. The other injury was Amen Thompson. Sprained his ankle in a walking boot and crutches after the game. He is going to miss a significant period of time, I'm guessing. No actual official update on that. So who replaces him? Well, he's been starting at point guard with Fred VanVleet out. So if VanVleet remains out, Aaron Holiday. There's no other option. Reed Shepherd's out as well. Aaron Holiday scored 20 last game. Would he be a 12-team league ad? Probably not, but he would be a streamable 12-team guy. If VanVleet is back, Amen would have been the power forward. So he won't be that. So that means Tari Eason and Jabari Smith bump. Do they bump enough? Well, Eason, yes, he's a 12-team guy who's very up and down. Is Smith going to be a 12-team guy? I would say that I would be more interested if VanVleet is returning in adding Smith versus adding Aaron Holiday if VanVleet is out. So that is how I would view that one. We hope, and it's really annoying that he stayed in a 30-point blowout to get an extra rebound to get a triple-double because triple-doubles are actually 100% completely meaningless. They're absolutely meaningless. If you get 10 rebounds and 10 assists, that's significantly better than 11 rebounds and 9 assists apparently, or 11 assists and 9 rebounds. You got to make sure it's 10-10. Desi supremacy needs to end. It's so stupid. And I actually don't really blame them massively for keeping him in to get the triple-double because the amount of glazing that happens over triple-doubles makes it seem like it's important. And it's not at all. Not even remotely close to being important. And now he's injured. Cool. Let's look at the most dropped players on Yahoo over the last 24 hours. Number one on that list is Carlton Bub Carrington because we saw Jordan Poole come back and he played 23 minutes. And this is why you cannot rely on Bub Carrington. Bub has some solid games. Absolutely. Is he good enough? Are the good games good enough to hold through the bad games? Is the fact that they've got a trigger finger so itchy that they're ready to pull him to the bench immediately when something happens a good sign? No, it's the opposite. It's a shit sign. So no, you don't need to, I don't believe, be rostering Bub Carrington. Can you? Okay, sure. Is he a must? No way. The good isn't good enough. The bad is too bad. No. Duncan Robinson dropped. We know what Duncan is. He's a points and 3 streamer. You do not need to hold him. The next most dropped player is Brandon Pajemski, who his stats, when you look at them, they're going to be skewed by the fact that he played 40 seconds in one game. He missed the next game with a back issue. his numbers, like even with that, he's 176th over the last week, averaging 12, 5, and 2 with a steal. The shooting numbers aren't great, but he's averaging 22 minutes because he played 40 seconds in one game. I think that he is a rosterable guy until Kuminga returns. But I also don't know when Podziemski is coming back. So, at this period of the season, 5 weeks to go, you've got to be cutting their asses. Easy. Like, you don't hold on to guys like this. As much as I think Podziemski can be useful, you don't have to hold on to guys like this. You cut their asses. Same with Davion Mitchell's an interesting one because he's been playing a lot of minutes. His game last time he played 30 minutes only, but he's still got good assists and good steals. But he's actually, at this point, he's a better option than Isaiah Collier. He's getting more minutes, and he's been more efficient in general. But he's not a must roster at all. He's a guy that is very specific for certain spots, not a points league guy at all. He's a category league guy for certain areas, and I probably, out of the guys on this list, I probably would have held Davion out of all of them. But I also understand why you wouldn't. Wendell Carter Jr. was dropped. Yeah, just shouldn't be rostered. He is a streamable guy who had and you see how reactive people are on Yahoo, and I think that there is a level of, I get pulling the plug on guys early, but you know that what I say about this, and you can repeat what I'm going to say. When someone has a good game and you add them, you don't get that game. When someone has a bad game and you drop them, you don't eliminate that bad game off your ledger. And while that bad game was bad, does that mean the next one's going to be bad? It's all about, do you believe in a player? Do you believe what they can provide? Now, I don't believe what Wendell Carter can provide, but I wouldn't be like, hey, I've got him. Yeah, I love Wendell. Man, he had a really bad one. Let's drop him. Because that happens, right? We see so much variance game by game. Santi Aldama's been dropped because he came back. He played 21 minutes. He got hurt again. He got sore again in his calf. And now I don't know when he's coming back. And Santi Aldama has been one of the players this season that I have just never been able to get right. I have been wrong on him all the way through. He's playing 22 minutes off the bench. I don't believe that's a 12-team league guy. And then he goes and shoots 70% with 13 rebounds and 4 steals. And you're like, all right, cool. I guess, let me give it 3 weeks. None of this makes sense. And then I finally give in and say, yeah, I guess he can do this in these minutes. And then he does that and has a 10% shooting night and has 6 and 2. And that happened about 4 times this year. I cannot get Santi Aldama correct. I've been wrong on him all season. So I'll tell you now, I've got no problem dropping him because I do not believe that Santi Aldama is as good as the good patches show. But there was an opportunity here. How funny will it be if Jaren actually returns before Santi does now? Yeah, anyway, the long story short of that is drop him. Got a couple more lists of names to talk about. We'll talk about some other players who are in the top 100 over the last week. Number 1 on this list is, somehow, Al Horford. Because Porzingis has been out with the illness from hell. The big fella got avian flu somehow, was a fake illness, which they late scratched him for, played him the next day, and then he's been out for like 10 days since. What the hell is happening? So Horford's been playing, and this is, I think, a real worry for Horford here. He's playing like 36 minutes a night. Now, he's cooking at the moment, Al. No, he's putting up good enough numbers. But they are playing him 15 more minutes than they should be. So he is going to have extended rests down the stretch here. He is going to be sitting so many games and be absolutely useless when Porzingis returns. But he has been good. That is true. He has been good. Jalen Williams, Pig Williams, is in the top 100. And that's largely because there was a game on Friday when the Thunder sat everybody. The big fella dropped a triple-double in that game, I think, the key stat of all stats. Put up everything. But of course, he's not going to do that unless they sit everybody again. So it's good to know that he could stuff the stat sheet to that degree. And his passing this season has been incredibly impressive. But it doesn't mean anything. Trey Jones has been in the top 100. I don't buy it. Again, it happened. I know it happened. We've seen it happen. But there's been no Lonzo. There's been no Vooch. There's been no Pat Williams. And Trey Jones has been starting. Could Trey Jones continue to start if those guys remain out? Yeah, he almost certainly will. Is his upside good enough to hold on waiting for that? No. I wouldn't. Look, single game streams, do it. Go for your life, whatever. The Bulls have got a terrible schedule this week. They want 5 teams with only 2 quality games. So I don't care about adding him. The next one I want to talk about there is Aaron Nesmith, who has also been very, very good. Largely, again, context dependent. Nesmith was trucking along as like the 160th best player. And then Ben Mathurin went out. And his minutes went up 4 or 5. He went on an incredible hot streak. He's shooting 53 from the field over the last week and 100 from the line. That's ridiculously good. But in true Aaron Wiggins style, have a look at that line. 17 points a game. And then a combined, let me look at this, a combined 6.3 rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. That's not enough. Average for rebounds in a fantasy league is about 5.5, and he's averaging 6.3 rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. He is getting value because he's going 17 points, below average. 2.3 triples, above average, but shooting 53 and 100. And playing 34 minutes. If he plays 29, when Halliburton and Mathurin are both there, he's not worth it. So he's 96th over the last week. Neesmith, okay, pretty good. The value is there when the schedule makes sense and when these guys are out and you use him. It's all about hitting at the right spot. But as a long-term hold, no way. Same, the no way goes for Kevin Porter Jr., who is in the top 100 over the last week. Why? Again, because they had a game when they won by about 40 points. He played 27 minutes and got a Ray Felton triple-double, which again boosts your numbers. He was okay at scoring in their last game. He played 21 minutes or so with Ryan Rollins out of that one and Gary Trent out. Don't buy it. Don't add him. Deep leagues only. Not a 12-team guy. Barely anything. But I will say this. The Bucks are one of 3 teams who play 4 quality games this week. And when you're searching through Big Boom AJ Green, Kyle Kuzma, Gary Trent, Taurean Prince to get 4 games out of if that's the way you want to go, Porter's not bad. Now, there is a risk that he plays 60 total minutes, 15 minutes a game. He could play 80 minutes, which is solid. So he's almost like a 14-team league guy because of the schedule. The other name there is Aaron Wiggins, who continues to be ridiculously good. Boosted again by that game where everybody was out, and then boosted by games where Dort sits, or Caruso sits, or Wallace sits, or Joe sits. He's shooting the lights out. He is a points guy on high-efficiency shooting. And if that goes away, you don't get anything else really. Love what he does. Incredibly efficient scorer. But 7th man, 23 minutes a night, needing 55% shooting. It's not an archetype that I like to rely upon that much. Lastly, I've got 6 more names that I want to talk about. Some of them I've already spoken about, and the top 2 there are Lakers players, Jared Vanderbilt, and I can't believe 16 teams let this guy fall to pick 17, Dalton Connect. We've talked about them already. LeBron is out. You know what you're getting. Steals, rebounds, some blocks for Vandy, points, threes, white guy aura for Dalton Connect. I don't know what else you get. Fine to stream, not musts. I've got Dennis Schroeder on this list. A lot of people added him. I'm largely on the back of the weekend back-to-back. The Pistons do not have as good of a schedule this week. Schroeder had benefited last game from Asar Thompson being in foul trouble and the games before from Tobias Harris being out. But realistically, he's a 20-minute-a-night player at best when they're healthy, and that is not good enough for most leagues. But people have been adding him, and again, I'm hoping that's just for the weekend back-to-back, which is a totally reasonable call. But that's it. Vince Williams, another interesting name on this list because with Santi out, with Jaren out, Vince is going to start. And in 28 minutes a night, he is at least streamable. If he gets 28, he's at least streamable. Is he a must in 12s? I don't think I would go that far with Vince. I don't mind that call. He's quite a good player, and opportunity is open with the 2 guys ahead of him being injured. So that does boost him up for at least your decision-making processes. The next guy I got on this list is one just to have in your head. It is the big fella himself, Shed World, Jamal Shed. Because we saw him have the game-winning shot that was just a little bit too late for the Raptors to lose against the Wizards. And if they're going to be sitting Emmanuel Quickley in back-to-backs, their point guard is Jamal Shed. And Jamal Shed in 30 minutes will get you Davion Mitchell, Isaiah Collier numbers, maybe, occasionally, half of the time, be better than those guys in equivalent minutes. So Shed is not a name where you need to necessarily add him, but if you're in deeper leagues, if you're in stashable formats, if you're in roto leagues, I'd add him. Because I think there are going to be periods where you might get, in 30% of the remaining games, top 90 value. And in those sort of formats, you plug him in those spots. So he's just a name, much like Orlando Robinson, just a name you watch. 2 guys who have interesting fantasy profiles, who are going to get spot starts and spot boosts. The last name on this list is another one of those ones. This is largely for this week, but it's Tyrese Martin. And you might be saying, who? Yeah, fair enough. He was on... Now, the confusing thing is the Nets started this season with 2 Martins on 2-way contracts. Jalen and Tyrese. Jalen got waived. Tyrese has been converted. No more game limit issues. Their game limit issue guy is Tosan Ebboman, who can play half the games remaining. Martin, over the last week, has 20% usage. He's rostered literally nowhere. He's 198th in head-to-head category leagues. He's averaging 11 points with 3 rebounds. He's generated 1 block over the week. That's it. No steals, 1 block. And not much else. He's shooting very well in 22 minutes. But it's a name to watch. With 5 games this week, if you're in a weekly lock league and he plays 22 minutes, it's 100 minutes of action. Is that good enough to actually consider a start? Debatable. And then if they start sitting Johnson or Thomas or whoever, Russell, could he have some 28-minute night games? Is he better than Jalen Wilson? Zaire Williams? Debatable. Again, this is a double Onyx. This is a deeper league cut. This is a situation where it's not going to be like for everybody, but it's also a name that nobody really talks about. Nobody really mentions him. He is behind the Zaires and the Keons, but he's getting minutes. He's been better than Jalen Wilson, and this is an opportunity for him to have a couple of pop games. So I just want to alert you to the name. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to understand that with 4 quality games and 5 total games, we might be talking about Tyrese Martin a little bit more than we expected. I was talking a little bit more than I expected throughout this whole show. So, apologies. That's the Waiver Wire show done. I hope that you've had ample time to think about Andres Biedrins. And during that time, you can hit the thumb on the video. You can leave your comments, and we can get out of here. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.